Welcome student. Today we will study the next concept, that is synapse. What is synapse? Synapse is the junction between the two neurons with a minute gap. It is termed as synapse or synapse. Synapse, here we can see this is one nerve cell and this is the another. So the junction or the gap between the two neurons is called as the synapse. Got it? Now we'll study the properties of nerve fiber. This is nerve fiber. A single neuron or nerve cell, it is also termed as the nerve fiber or nerve cell. The properties of nerve fiber. First is excitability or irritability. Excitability means a neuron or the nerve fiber which has the ability to perceive stimulus and enter the state of ॲक्टिवेशन, चेतना प्राप्त करणं किंवा उत्तेजना प्राप्त करणं ही क्षमता असणं, ही क्षमता कोणामध्ये असते? नर्व फायबरमध्ये. सो इट हॅज एबिलिटी टू परसीव और रिसीव द स्टिम्युलस अँड एंटर द स्टेट ऑफ ॲक्टिवेशन. नेक्स्ट प्रॉपर्टी इज कंडक्टिव्हिटी. कंडक्टिव्हिटी मीन्स द एबिलिटी टू ट्रान्समिट द एक्सायटेशन. जी उत्तेजना आहे ती ट्रान्समिट करून नेणं, त्याला आपण कंडक्टिव्हिटी म्हणतो. अँड इट इज द अनदर प्रॉपर्टी ऑफ द नर्व फायबर. थर्ड इज स्टिम्युलस. स्टिम्युलस, any detectable physical, chemical or electrical change in the external or internal environment of the body, which brings about the excitation in the nerve, muscle, organ or the full organism. So stimulus म्हणजे संवेदना. तर ओळखू येणारी भौतिक, रासायनिक, विद्युत बदल घडून आणणारी, मग तो बाह्य असो, बाह्य पर्यावरणातील संवेदना असो किंवा अंतर शरीरातील संवेदना असो, त्याला आपण एक्सटर्नल स्टिम्युलस और इंटरनल स्टिम्युलस असं म्हणतो. अँड हे काय घडून आणतं? तर चेंज घडून आणतं. चेंज म्हणजे एक्सायटेशन घडून आणतं. आणि त्यालाच कशामध्ये? तर नर्वमध्ये किंवा मसलमध्ये किंवा ऑर्गनमध्ये किंवा ऑर्गॅनिझममध्ये. Next property is, before going to next, the stimulus is of three types. Threshold stimulus, we can say. Threshold stimulus means the stimulus has the minimum intensity to be effective. Minimum, कमीत कम त्याच्यामध्ये प्रभाव करण्याची क्षमता असते त्या स्टिम्युलसमध्ये. सर्वसाधारण स्टिम्युलस आपण ज्याला म्हणतो. सो the stimulus has the minimum intensity to be effective. Second type of stimulus is subliminal. Subliminal stimulus. This type of stimulus it is weak or it does not show much effect. खूप कमी अल्प प्रमाणात किंवा कुठल्याच प्रकारचा स्टिम्युलस दिसून येत नाही, त्याला म्हणून वीक स्टिम्युलस, कमकुवत स्टिम्युलस असं म्हणतो, की जो काही परिणाम फारसा घडून आणत नाही, त्याला सबलिमिनल स्टिम्युलस असं म्हणतो. नेक्स्ट इज सुप्रालिमिनल, विच हॅज द स्ट्रॉंग और इट कॅन प्रोड्यूस द सेम डिग्री ॲज ऑफ स्टिम्युलस ॲज दॅट ऑफ द थ्रेशोल्ड. थ्रेशोल्ड सारखीच त्याला आपण किंवा त्याच्यापेक्षा अधिक अशा प्रकारची तीव्र संवेदना, स्ट्रॉंग स्टिम्युलस, त्याला आपण सुप्रालिमिनल असं म्हणतो. नेक्स्ट इज समेशन इफेक्ट. Summation effect means a single subliminal or weak stimulus. It has no effect, but if many such weak stimuli are given in quick succession, it may produce an impact on the organism or the organ. It is called as the summation. Total sum means एक सबलिमिनल म्हणजे वीक स्टिम्युलस एकापेक्षा अधिक असं सातत्यानं क्विक सक्सेशनमध्ये दिलं तर त्याचा एकूण प्रभाव म्हणजे टोटल सम effect it can be shown, and this is the property of the nerve fiber. Next is all or none law. Next is all or none law. This is the another property. The nerve either conduct impulse along the entire length or will not at all conduct the stimulus. This is all or none law. म्हणजेच एखादी नर्व फायबर ती इम्पल्स कंडक्ट करू शकते पूर्ण लेंथ कुणाच्या नर्व फायबरच्या along the neuron nerve cell or nerve fiber, or it may not produce stimulus at all. That is the all or none law. त्याच्यानंतर येतं रिफ्रॅक्टरी पिरियड, म्हणजेच it is the time interval about milliseconds during which the nerve fails to respond to the second stimulus. However, the second stimulus it may be stronger. किती तीव्रता असू द्या स्टिम्युलसची, त्याला आपण काय म्हणतो, द टाइम इंटरवल, म्हणजेच जो मध्य आपण ज्याला म्हणतो, स्टिम्युलस ट्रान्समिट होत असतानाचा जो मध्य आहे त्याला आपण रिफ्रॅक्टरी पिरियड, कालावधी रिफ्रॅक्शनचा, त्याला टाइम इंटरवल इट इज अबाउट द मिलीसेकंड्स when the transmission of nerve impulse takes place from one nerve cell to another nerve cell. Next is synaptic delay. Delay म्हणजे विलंब होणं. Synaptic delay. To cross a synapse, impulses takes how much time it takes? 0.3 to 0.5 milliseconds, and this time required for the release of neurotransmitter. Why this time it takes place? Why does the impulse gets delayed? It gets delayed because the time is required for the release of this neurotransmitter from the synaptic vesicle. Therefore, there is a delay from axon terminal and excitation in the dendron of next neuron. This is the dendron of next neuron, and this is the axon terminal of previous neuron, presynaptic neuron. So synaptic delay takes place here 0.3 to 0.5 milliseconds it is required for the release. Next is the synaptic fatigue. Fatigue म्हणजे थकवा, म्हणजे इम्पल्स ट्रान्समिट होत असताना जो गॅप आहे त्याच्यामध्ये थोडा ज्याला आपण म्हणतो थकवा त्या ठिकाणी जाणवतो, म्हणून त्याला सिनॅप्टिक फटिग असं म्हटलेलं आहे. सो द ट्रान्समिशन ऑफ नर्व इम्पल्स इट अक्रॉस द सिनॅप्स इट हॉल्ट्स टेम्पररीली. हॉल्ट म्हणजे थांबा, थोडा थांबतो तात्पुरत्या स्वरूपामध्ये. इट हॉल्ट्स टेम्पररीली ड्यू टू द एक्झॉस्ट ऑफ इट्स न्यूरोट्रान्समिशन. न्यूरोट्रान्समिशन होत असताना थोडासा थकवा आपण ज्याला म्हणतो त्या ठिकाणी जाणवतो, आणि त्याला सिनॅप्टिक फटिग असं म्हणतात. आपल्या शरीरामध्ये जसं मसल फटिग, मसल स्नायू थकतात, तसंच सिनॅप्टिक फटिग हा शब्द समजून घ्या. नेक्स्ट इज द व्हेलॉसिटी. व्हेलॉसिटी इट इज द रेट ऑफ ट्रान्समिशन. इट इज द रेट ऑफ ट्रान्समिशन ऑफ इम्पल्स. इट इज फास्टर इन लॉंग अँड थिक नर्व. लांब आणि थिक असणारी जी नर्व आहे त्याच्यामध्ये जी ट्रान्समिशनची जी व्हेलॉसिटी आहे, रेट ऑफ ट्रान्समिशन ऑफ इम्पल्सची व्हेलॉसिटी, तर ती फास्टर असते, अधिक गतीनं ट्रान्समिशन त्या ठिकाणी घडत असतं. हे कशाचे आपण प्रॉपर्टीज वी आर स्टडिंग द प्रॉपर्टीज ऑफ नर्व फायबर्स. नेक्स्ट इज इट इज हायर इन होमिओथर्म्स. उष्ण रक्त असणारे त्याला होमिओथर्म्स असं म्हणतो. इट इज ऑल्सो हायर इन होमिओथर्म्स. द रेट ऑफ ट्रान्समिशन ऑफ इम्पल्स इज हायर इन होमिओथर्म्स. नेक्स्ट इज द व्हेलॉसिटी ऑफ ट्रान्समिशन इज ऑल्सो हायर इन द व्हॉलंटरी fibers, voluntary muscle fibers, which brings about the quick action, and it is about 100 to 120 milliseconds in the human beings, in man particularly, and in the same in man only, the involuntary or autonomic nerves, their velocity of transmission is 10 to 20 milliseconds. So remember this. Again, velocity it is faster in modulated nerve fiber, because this impulse has to jump from one node of Ranvier to the another node of Ranvier. So at this synapse, the neuron communicates with each other. The neurons communicates with each other. Neuron, the carrying the impulse, is a presynaptic neuron. जो न्यूरॉन इम्पल्स कॅरी करतो, कंडक्ट करून येतो, इथपर्यंत घेऊन येतो ॲक्झॉन टर्मिनलला, त्याला आपण प्रीसिनॅप्टिक न्यूरॉन असं म्हणतो. द न्यूरॉन विच रिसिव्ज द इम्पल्स इज अ पोस्ट सिनॅप्टिक न्यूरॉन. प्रीसिनॅप्टिक न्यूरॉन अँड पोस्ट. बिफोर द सिनॅप्स देअरफॉर प्रीसिनॅप. प्री मीन्स अगोदर आणि सिनॅप्सच्या नंतर म्हणजेच पोस्ट सिनॅप्टिक न्यूरॉन. It is also called as generator neuron because it innervates into the glands or muscles. Between the two presynaptic neuron and postsynaptic neuron, between two cells, the small intercellular space is present. It is called as the synaptic cleft, and the diameter it varies according to the nature of the neurotransmitter. And the width is 20 to 30 nanometers. Intercellular gap or space, the width is 20 to 30 nanometers. Synaptic transmission is the impulse from the presynaptic neuron when it is conducted and it is transmitted to the postsynaptic neuron or the cell. It is called as the synaptic transmission. And it is also one-way process. The transmission of impulse from presynaptic neuron to postsynaptic neuron, it is called as synaptic transmission. Definitions you need to remember. What is synaptic transmission? The impulse which is conducted by the presynaptic neuron, it is received by the postsynaptic neuron through the synaptic cleft, through the synapse. This is called as synaptic transmission. The transmission which occurs from presynaptic neuron to postsynaptic neuron through the synaptic cleft is called as synapse, and it is also always one-way process. Now next is the types of synapses. There are two types of synapses. First is electrical synapse and another is chemical synapse. Electrical synapse, it is the gap between two neurons and it is very narrow. Electrical synapse takes place through the presynaptic neuron and postsynaptic neuron, where the gap is very narrow, and therefore the transmission occurs at faster rate, quicker rate, and this synapse is mechanical. So electrical conductive link forms between the pre and postsynaptic neuron. Electrical एक विद्युत प्रवाह कंडक्शन त्या ठिकाणी निर्माण होतो, एक लिंक तयार होते between the pre and postsynaptic neuron, and the gap is in electrical synapse, the gap is 3.8 nanometers distance. So the transmission is faster. Electrical synapse is found place of the body where fast response is required. Electrical synapse, where it is found? It is found in the body, the place of the body where faster response is required. Example, defense reflexes. संरक्षण ज्याला आपण रिफ्लेक्स म्हणतो, प्रतिक्षिप्त क्रिया म्हणतो, it should be faster. It may be bidirectional, means in both direction, or unidirectional, means in one way. Unidirectional signal. Next is chemical synapse. Electrical synapses, we can say the blinking of eyes. Example, we can say the blinking of eyes, pricking of needle, withdrawal of hand after pricking of needle, or when we touch the hand to the hot pan, immediately we withdraw our hand. These are, or hammering with the hand at the site of mosquito bite. These are the synapses electrical synapses which takes place within fraction of second in less time, because the gap between two neurons is of 3.8 nanometer. The gap is very small, narrow. Therefore, transmission occurs at faster rate. Next is the chemical synapse. Synaptic gap is larger. The synaptic gap is larger in chemical synapse, chemical type of synapse, than the electrical synapse. It is nearly about 20 to 40 nanometers. How much? 20 to 40 nanometers. Where the chemical signals are sent from one cell to other cell, that is one neuron to the other neuron, or to the non-neuronal cells like glands and muscles. Chemical synapse between motor neuron and muscle cell is neuromuscular junction. What is neuromuscular? Between neuron and muscle cell. The chemical synapse between the motor neuron, you should know, the neuron which brings the response from the brain, and that signals brought by motor neuron, they innervates in the muscle cell, and the muscle cell shows the effect. There are three components of chemical synapse: presynaptic terminal. This is called as presynaptic terminal. Next is the synaptic membrane of postsynaptic cell. Synaptic membrane of the postsynaptic neuron or cell, and the third is postsynaptic neuron. This is the postsynaptic neuron which receives the stimulus. So these are the three components of the chemical synapse. Now, what happens when the impulse is brought along the length of this axon? It reaches here up to the axonic knob or axon terminal. Here, these voltage gated calcium channels, they are opened immediately after the impulse is reached into the axonic knob, and the calcium 2 plus ions, they enters from the extracellular fluid into the intracellular fluid, exoplasm. The fluid within the axon is called as exoplasm. So calcium 2 plus ions, they enters, and because of this calcium 2 plus ions, these synaptic vesicles, these vesicular structures are called as synaptic vesicles. They get stimulated, they move towards the terminal part of the presynaptic neuron, and from where from these synaptic vesicles the neurotransmitters are released into the synaptic cleft, and from where these neurotransmitters, they binds to the receptors present on the postsynaptic neuron. These receptors are present on the postsynaptic neuron, and these receptors, they bind with the neurotransmitters, and here there is flow of the sodium and the potassium ions from the presynaptic neuron into the synaptic cleft, and from where they passes or reaches into the postsynaptic neuron. Along with them, they carry the impulse, sensory impulse or motor impulse. This is all about the synapse, the properties of nerve fiber and the types of synapses. That's all.